Friends, welcome. He said with the soundtrack starting up behind him again. No, that's not the first time that's happened. Thursday, 19th of September, friends, 4 minutes past the hour. Do forgive the delay. We're waiting for Dr. Naomi Wolf to come into the studio. I am very honored today to bring forth to this audience after some months' absence in broadcasting the AGN. Forgive me, I've been on a very extended tour of Europe, and it's not quite over yet. But I thought it was important enough right now, given the orchestra of chaos that we're all variously trying to navigate in our lives. Everyone asking me where I'm in Cape Town in South Africa right now. People asking me constantly, what is the status? And I had no idea how to answer them. Just don't know. It's become such a, as I said, an orchestra of chaos. I determined to try to find out what the status is myself. So I telephoned Joanne and said, please line up the 4 best voices in the world today. If indeed we have any clout, let's try to bring them on board. And indeed, we did get them. We nailed the A-list friends. Dr. Naomi Wolf will be joining us as soon as she can, but I'm going to start with the guests in the green room. Steve Kirsch, the high-tech serial entrepreneur turned investigative journalist who has authored over 1,500 articles on vaccine safety on his Substack, covering COVID mitigation policies, vaccines, corruption, censorship, and early treatments. The data shows that vaccines are ruining the health of Americans and continuing the epidemic in a variety of health conditions. Now, Steve, as many of you know, is the founder of the Vaccine Safety and Research Foundation, and has been one of the most outspoken mainstream and non-medical critics of the COVID vaccination program. Steve Kirsch, very happy to see you today.
Hi, Sacha. Good to be here.
Good. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Sherri Tenpenny, friends, a medical doctor, board certified in osteopathic medicine with certification in integrative medicine. She previously worked as a full-time emergency medicine physician and director of a level 2 trauma center for 12 years. She's founder of Tenpenny Integrative Medical Center, a clinic near Cleveland, Ohio, that provides natural and holistic approaches to getting well and has attracted patients from all 50 states and more than 20 countries around the world. Sherri's authority in the field of vaccines is unparalleled and highly recognized, as you all know. And over the last almost 25 years, she has invested tens of thousands of hours of research, writing, and speaking nationally and internationally. Sherri, so happy to see you today.
Thank you so much, Sacha. Thank you for inviting me. Good afternoon, Steve. Good to see you too.
Dr. Tenpenny.
Tom Renz, friends, acclaimed attorney, political commentator, educator, health freedom advocate, businessman, and patriot. He has gained international attention for his work challenging corruption in the US government and advocating for individual liberty, medical freedom, and informed choice. Renz's legal expertise and relentless advocacy have established him as a leading voice in the fight for our freedoms. And notably, he is the only American to ever clerk with the Honorable Justice Tarun Chatterjee of the Supreme Court of India, and he is licensed to argue before the US Supreme Court, which makes him a rather difficult customer for the status quo. Tom has testified before numerous state and federal elected officials and committees and has spoken at countless events with audiences exceeding tens of thousands about the issues we are covering today. Tom, thank you for joining us today.
Honored to be here, Sacha. Thrilled to see you, Sherri and Steve. Just great people. Glad to be here.
Indeed. Thanks, Tom. And yes, we have Dr. Naomi Wolf in the green room. She is the best-selling author, columnist, and professor. She is a graduate of Yale University and received a doctorate from Oxford. She is co-founder and CEO of dailyclout.io, a successful civic tech company. And since the publication of her landmark international bestseller, The Beauty Myth, which the New York Times called one of the most important books of the 20th century, Dr. Wolf's other 7 bestsellers have been translated worldwide, and she's written for every major news outlet in the US and many globally. She had 4 opinion columns, including in The Guardian and the Sunday Times of London. She must be congratulated on the recent hard copy publication of the Pfizer papers. As she puts it, the book that 2 governments, 4 agencies, 6 tech platforms, and 2 gigantic multinational industries sought and failed to suppress. We will ask about what they wanted to hide so badly. Dr. Wolf, what did they want to hide so badly?
Well, thank you so much for having me on, especially with what an array of my personal heroes you've got with you today. I mean, I feel like I shouldn't say anything. I should just kind of sit in worship and gratitude. I can't believe I'm seeing Dr. Tenpenny and my friend Steve Kirsch and Tom Renz. Amazing. So you all probably know the highlights because either you've participated in the journey or broken some of the key stories elsewhere in related news because you're all pioneers in this field. But this is specifically the first commercial publication of 50 of the 109 now reports produced by our team of 3,250 doctors and scientists who volunteered under the leadership of Amy Kelly, my COO, and at the instigation of Steve Bannon, our friend in prison currently. They volunteered to read through and analyze and produce reports explaining what's in the 450,000 Pfizer documents released under court order via a successful lawsuit by attorney Aaron Seary, the documents that the FDA asked the court to keep hidden for 75 years. And as you all know, and your audience knows because we've spoken about it, but now they can actually hold the evidence in their hands. This book documents the greatest crime against humanity in recorded history.
Very good. Thanks, Naomi. I'm going to ask each of the panelists to please just give their 3 or 4 minute update, quick status update. Dr. Sherri, I'm start with you if that's okay. A state of the world today as it relates to human health and survival.
Well, I think that the biggest thing I would say is that they're pulling all sorts of stops. They're pulling everything out, and so they are backed up against the wall, and because they know that we have exposed them, and all the incredible work that Naomi and Steve and Tom have all done to expose what they are doing. I would just say that they've tried bird flu, which just was kind of a big flop. They're trying monkeypox, which is an equal big flop. And I think that the reason they defined something as disease X, because X means fill in the blank. I mean, whatever you want to put in there next. And so they're trying to ramp up the fear machine, which gratefully really isn't working. And so I would just say that the best idea is, with all the stuff that happened through COVID, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, I am not going to let that happen. And I've spoken to a lot of groups. I just spoke to a big group last night at the preview of the Vax 3 movie, which is a whole compilation of people divided into categories of people that were vaccine injured, people that died from the COVID shot of vaccine injury, people that died in the hospital because of the horrible malpractice care. And I've said from the beginning, for the last 3 years, people didn't die in the hospital from COVID, they died of medical malpractice. And after watching that film last night, I felt like every one of these hospitals that they had interviewed people, hundreds and hundreds of people that had horrible stories. They were all the same all across the country. Somebody should go out and take a big yellow tape and wrap them around these hospitals, and because they're crime scenes. And hopefully, eventually, we'll be able to get to the bottom of that. And the people in hospitals and the doctors will be held accountable.
Very good. Thank you. Steve, can I ask you the same question? 9/11 Planetary HealthCheck status update. How do you see it?
Well, I think the conclusion is pretty clear that all the data points to the COVID vaccines being enormously unsafe and not beneficial at all. So there have been several studies that have had revealing statistics showing there's no hospitalization benefit. You actually get more infections if you take the COVID jabs. And of course, there's no death benefit whatsoever. It's only downside for these vaccines. They're making you more likely to die, so they're increasing your all-cause mortality. And there was a data disclosure, it was under a Freedom of Information Act in the Czech Republic. And the person was able to obtain over 10 million records of everyone in the Czech Republic, including when they got vaccinated, if they got vaccinated, and when they died, if they died. And it's very clear that there are brand differences between the vaccines. There are major brand differences between the vaccine. And yet, not a single health authority in the entire world is measuring the differences in mortality, in all-cause mortality caused by COVID vaccine A versus COVID vaccine B versus COVID vaccine C. So the question that any critical thinker would ask is, if they're trying to protect us, why wouldn't they be disclosing these statistics? Now, so you don't have to believe me. And, I've been accused of being a spreader of misinformation. All you have to do is believe the information which they are not telling you. And they are not telling you the relative risk in terms of all-cause mortality of these vaccines. And the reason they're not telling you the relative risks are because it would be an admission that, in fact, they screwed up. So that will never happen. So the health authorities aren't going to talk about it, and the mainstream media is not going to cover it. It's the same thing with, there's a young 23-year-old girl in the hospital right now. She was forced to take 3 vaccines, and these were not COVID vaccines. These are other vaccines that are supposedly, safe and effective. And those vaccines caused a horrific reaction. And the doctors for days gave her nothing but painkillers to address the very serious symptoms that she's had. She didn't have the proper workups done. She didn't have the tests that were needed. And so now we're arranging to have those tests done and for her to get the care that she needs. But there's complete denial as to what the cause of of her injuries were, even though they happened 10 minutes after she got the 3 vaccines. So you're looking at someone who's perfectly normal, who for all intents and purposes looks just like me. And 10 minutes after she gets 3 vaccines, none of them a COVID vaccine, 10 minutes later, she cannot see. And so this is a huge problem of denial. And the physician that ordered that she get the shot in order to receive medical care, she said, well, it couldn't be the vaccines because the vaccines are safe and this has never happened before. So it must have been something else. And so the degree of denial in the medical community, and by the way, her reaction is typical. The degree of denial in the medical community is simply astonishing. I talked to a paramedic recently, and he's well known on Twitter, and I asked him, how many vaccine deaths have you seen? He said over 20 that he would swear to. And so there are at least 130,000 paramedics, 130 to 170,000 paramedics. And if you do the math, if he is an extreme outlier, in other words, he's the only guy in the country to see 20 events, then it means the average number of events seen by a paramedic is 6. And you take 6 and you multiply it by, let's call it 120,000 paramedics. That's 720,000 deaths caused by the vaccine estimated using this method. We can use other methods to estimate the death toll from the COVID vaccine, and they come up with similar numbers. So we can use doctor observations, and the doctors I talk to average around 4 to 5 vaccine deaths per 1,000 patients vaccinated. So if you assume that they are 2 standard deviations away from the mean, that means the mean is somewhere around 2 deaths per 1,000, which would, because there are 270 million vaccinations, we're looking at a rate of over 540,000 Americans have been killed by these vaccines. And yet, nobody wants to talk about that in Congress for some reason.
Indeed. Thank you, Steve. Very sobering indeed. Tom, has anything changed since we last spoke? It seems to me that it's very much a static game. Just the spiking seems to be creeping skyward everywhere you look. But the general sort of métier of reality seems to be very much the same since we last spoke, rather depressively so, I must say. What is your status update?
Well, unfortunately, I'm going to tell you that it's actually gotten worse. To sum it up in a very unprofessional word, FUBAR, I think best applies here. So what's occurred is that we see the continued gain of function work, and it's ongoing in the U.S., right? The gain of function, and I would say there's two main strains of things that we need to look at. The continued gain of function and development of things to make you sick so they can give you something to make you well, and the push to normalize and integrate this mRNA platform into all things. Those are critical, and they're two distinct things. And the bad guys are making progress on both. I define bad guys as anybody who is promoting something that is unsafe and ineffective because they made $14 trillion in the U.S. alone off of the first COVID go-around. So what we've seen is McCullough put out a great proximal origins paper on the bird flu that was coming out. Now, I've been able to verify and validate some of that, and we were actually able to, with some whistleblower stuff, we didn't make this public because I didn't think it was worth the distraction, but we were able to verify there's a number of people in the, I believe it, in the Georgia University system that seem to be working on various things related to gain of function. Some of the same people who were involved in the Wuhan lab are now in Georgia doing work related to the bird flu, it appears. It's kind of terrifying. And, you know, they're making it more dangerous. We see the monkeypox. Now, interestingly enough, monkeypox, which is really an absolute joke. I mean, they declared a World Health emergency over something that had less than 1,000 deaths in 2 years. But they declared it on this new, more dangerous strain of monkeypox. Interestingly enough, that new, more dangerous strain mimics a proposal that was approved by Anthony Fauci in 2015, whereby Anthony Fauci allowed them to mix two strains of monkeypox, one more deadly, one more virulent, to create this new thing. Now, that funding, which HHS denied that they did anything with, was actually, it was there, the funding was there, the approval was there, and the approval was only withdrawn in 2023, right before the new current strain of monkeypox hit, which I'm sure is an absolute coincidence. Interestingly enough, or even more interestingly, one of the things that you probably haven't seen is that with this new particular strain that they were engineering in, by the way, NIAID's genetic engineering department, which, why do we have that? Interestingly enough, this new strain used a strain of monkeypox, and it's the Clade 2 strain was called USA 2003. Please tell me how it is that we had a monkeypox named USA 2003. I mean, could it be that it was developed in the USA with gain of function work in 2003? I'm not saying that's suspicious, but really? Point being here that the gain of function is continuing. They're continuing with gain of function work on the coronaviruses. They're continuing the monkeypox. And we know that they're spending over $1 billion on disease X, which is coming. It could be one disease. It could be multiple diseases. Everybody's speculating about what disease X will be. It will be here. We don't know what it will be, but I am quite certain that it's sitting on a shelf right now, that it's the product of gain of function work, which is continuing unabated right now. Nobody wants to talk about it. And with each one of these gain of function projects, at the same time they're doing the gain of function work, they're creating, air quotes, vaccines, all of which are going to be mRNA based, to go with them. So expect disease X, expect a whole bunch of vaccines sometime in the near future so that they can try and argue that this WHO treaty should be fully implemented in the United States. The WHO treaty legally, I can tell you, it cannot actually. One of the things our side does is we've made the mistake of saying that it'll take over the Constitution. Well, technically, it can't. Okay, as a lawyer, it's not possible for a treaty to supersede a Constitution, but we've certainly seen under the lawless Biden administration and all the nonsense to COVID, they don't really care about the Constitution. So who knows what they'll actually do. The other thing that I think is really important to talk about is something that we do actually have the capacity to do something about if we were to have the funding to file the lawsuit to do it. The integration of mRNA into other platforms is, to my mind, illegal and demonstrably so. We would not have been able to do much with this, but for one key factor. The Loper decision overturned the Chevron doctrine, and Chevron deference is no longer there. This is wonderful news, and it's something that I have in my pocket, and I'm keeping my keg dry on it. I intend to make use of it if and when it's necessary, but it's something that could probably be used sooner rather than later. There's a number of cases that could be filed related to that in the Administrative Procedures Act, because the integration of this unsafe and ineffective platform that's done absolutely nothing positive for anyone into already approved platforms. For example, integrating this into a flu shot or into some of these other shots that are out there, to me seems like a wildly illegal move. It seems like a great, huge overreach by the FDA. I don't think they can actually do that. I would love to file that case, or to have it, to assist in filing that case, and am looking into it right now, to be honest. But I think those are really the keys. The push. I mean, we've seen the mRNA integration into the foods and into some of these other things. End of the day, they are hell-bent on making sure that every person in this country is exposed to this mRNA. And by the way, I saw some of the great work Naomi's done on the chemtrails. Mm-hmm. We actually have, I have a credible group of scientists that have presented me data, and it's not far enough for me to say that it's proof yet. They have kind of reverse engineered a mechanism by which they believe that they could actually aerosol. Well, first of all, we know they're aerosolizing the vaccines. Aerosolized vaccines are real. They can spread these through the air. That's not myth. That's fact. We can show it. And there's a group of scientists who are claiming that credibly, in my opinion, it's not been peer reviewed or fully studied yet, that they may actually be able to spread some of this even via a chemtrail. That they've been able to design some of this in a way so robust that it might even survive that sort of disbursement. And now, is that happening? I'm not saying it is at all. But I'm saying, why are we working on developing aerosolized vaccines? Why are we working to develop these vaccine mosquitoes? Bill Gates has funded to the tune of billions of dollars vaccine mosquitoes. How can you get informed consent if you put a vaccine into a mosquito or spray it in the air? Why would you develop that if you aren't going to use it? And how can you use it with informed consent? You can't. So I would say the state of things is actually, in a lot of ways, getting worse. But because no one's telling you have to wear a mask, people are becoming complacent and not giving it its due credit.
Very good. Well, I can tell you, in Africa, I've been speaking to a number of political leaders. In fact, I gave a lecture last Saturday, and I got a message from the High Commissioner the day before saying that the King of Kings, the supreme paramount chief, King of Kings, I think Cornelius Botha, the sixth, wanted to come into my talk, sat in the front row and brought 26 of the paramount chiefs and kings of Southern Africa to my 4.5-hour rant. And boy, I didn't hold back any punches. All I can say is that they will not be complying with the WHO. And there are many countries in Africa that are lighting up right now with younger generational hereditary leaders and political animals from generational families in political families, and they're not standing for it. They seem to have seen through it. And anyway, that's my takeaway from Africa, which is quite edifying, I have to say. Naomi, I saw you grimace when Tom mentioned Fauci. I just saw the grimace on your face. The WHO treaty, Fauci, disease X, all of the above, just a really bad Batman script. Do you believe this is going to manifest disease X?
Disease X. Well, first I want to just thank you, Sacha, because I've certainly been noticing that Africa keeps dissenting. It's the only block of dissent to the WHO treaty I'm aware of geographically. And I was wondering how that was happening, you know, what the information stream is. And you're clearly at least one of the important information streams. So that's exciting. And that's a story. I mean, you know, if there's any independent media down there that wants to invite me over to report on this network of leaders who are not going along with it, I think that's very, very newsworthy. Yeah. Now let me go to Disease X. Well, I really agree with what I think Dr. Tenpenny said, or maybe it was Steve Kirsch. I mean, like by now the apocalypse, you know, it's so kind of multivalent that it's almost hard to track the many threads of the drama of annihilating or just destroying human beings. But, you know, obviously, and, you know, what Mr. Renz pointed out, obviously, the Disease X is a manufactured thing that's going to be rolled out with a, you know, solution that will be bad for us or that we can't verify. I don't think that's a surprise. And I think Dr. Tenpenny was very right to say they tried Mpox, they tried, what was the other one? Bird flu. Yeah. And humans are, you know, to their credit, they do learn to avoid things that are cutting or burning them, you know, by the third time, they're not falling for it. So that's wonderful. So then the next question is, what's the control matrix going to be? And I just looked at the EU Commission kind of portfolios, and I'm seeing how in the European Union, they're really rolling out a number of kind of control grids that will very effortlessly coerce people, you know, one way or another. And certainly they've drained national sovereignty in Europe, especially with these new portfolios. So without national sovereignty, really, you can have a constitution, but you really have no way practically to, you know, have a cease and desist order or stop bad treaties at the supranational level or bad policies at the supranational level. So I guess I'm less worried about what Disease X is, because it's just obvious that it's going to be Disease X, and it's going to be, I'm definitely anticipating a strike of some kind or a terrorist attack. Like I'm seeing, we've got 48 days to the election in the US. I'm seeing people are losing their minds, right? The people in charge of this country, the United States, are losing their minds. The people were burned at a Trump rally with what seemed like microwave weapons. You know, there was a second assassination attempt against President Trump, you know, a few days ago. It's literally, I'm getting scary letters from a government agency I'm not even going to, you know, name. I mean, everything is ramping up, you know, and I'm sure all the dissidents are one way or another. I think Matt Taibbi wrote a Substack about, it was a little opaque, but, you know, I think a lot of us are probably realizing that we're being targeted. I mean, my technology got hacked. I mean, any of us can say the same thing, right? It's a losing their minds kind of time, and they're going to throw everything at us. So I'm less worried about Disease X, more concerned about, are people stockpiling food? Do they have generators? Do they have, you know, medical supplies? I've been very interested in herbal remedies and natural remedies, because we have to keep ourselves healthy if the whole grid goes down, or if, you know, the whole medical system won't treat us anymore because we're dissidents, right? You know, I expect that there will be a Disease X, just like there's going to be a bunch of other attacks waged on us. And if, God forbid, you know, it's another Harris Biden or whatever, whoever's running the country, Harris Walz administration, or a Harris Walz administration, there's really going to be no boundaries. I mean, I promise I'll stop talking, but I'm in New York State, and the number 2 in Kathy Hochul's office, the governor's office, turned out to be a Chinese asset, meaning the number 1 hired a Chinese asset. God knows who the number 1 is, the chief of staff. Meaning all the policies in New York State were vetted, if not deployed, by China, and you can see it, and it means that the quarantine camps, which are just like those in China, which they've set up and they keep wanting to populate here in New York State, it'll be full speed ahead if it's a Biden-Harris regime, or at the WHO treaty, either way, Biden-Walz, right, Harris-Walz.
I'll tell you, in 2009, 2010, when I was a Director General in the United Nations, a lot of the high brass were Chinese assets. In fact, my last day there, I do recall kicking the door of the SecGen in and calling him an MF to his face in broad daylight, precisely because I could see, as could Dr. David Martin, who was working closely with me at that time on a very specific set of initiatives that we were trying to bring into the multilateral playing field. Mm-hmm. But we could see that the Chinese were buying out the basement of the IGO and the NGO sector in the UN, and I tried to confront the high brass on that very fact, and that was 15 years ago. So and we discovered that it was the Clinton Global Initiative behind most of that, I have to say.
Really?
Yeah.
So you were the Deputy Secretary General of the UN?
No, I was a Director General in the United Nations in the intergovernmental sector. And my portfolio was renewable energy and sustainability and all of that hoo-ha talk, which was really a build up to installing scarcity economics into the world as a kind of model. And that was, that was 15 years ago.
So that's a pretty senior position, Sacha.
It was not really. I mean, there are a number of intergovernmental organizations, IGOs, and the UN. That's how the UN is constructed. It's a globalist machine, a lot of good people trapped in a really shitty system. It's an extension of the League of Nations. It's a Fabianist Tavistockian construct, anyone who knows the real science, the forensic science of globalism. But the UN itself is an empty vessel, but they have many intergovernmental organizations, IGOs, and then underneath that, a potpourri of NGOs. Mm-hmm. And it's really
and David Martin was working there with you at that time?
Yes, very much so. I brought David in as my head of the economic policy unit on something called the Exemplar Zero Initiative, that we were attempting to bring breakthrough quantum technology solutions into the world via the Gulf states. We got them to agree to put up $5 billion to be the vanguard of bringing in real quantum solutions and slam dunk the petrodollar that way. It didn't turn out too well for us. We could have gotten to, we almost got into a lot of trouble.
One more question, not about you, and then I promise to give up the mic. If the UN is a Tavistockian construct, what hope do we have? I mean, Tavistock seems to be just constructing reality. How can anyone resist it? Everything?
We have no hope whatsoever if we continue to believe in any part of the United Nations. And I know I've got good friends there still, and they'll be hurling rocks at me roundabout now. But it's in my considered firsthand knowledge, there is no possible way of redeeming the United Nations when the source coding is so corrupted. And it's filled with cognac swigging fat cat diplomats who are hollow vessels, have less than zero integrity in the main, and that's a real problem. Generational diplomacy, fat cat diplomacy breeds a very unique kind of character, a character lacking in character, I should say. But anyway, that's my takeaway on the United Nations. I think it's a sorry state of affairs. Thank you. My great pleasure. Steve, wanted to bring you back in here and just ask, what is your take on the state of politics in the US? And do you believe that what's playing out with the elections upcoming, do you think any part of it is going to serve the American people and people of planet Earth? Really, the juggernaut for me that I'm trying to aim is at politics, party politics altogether. It seems to me that we've reached to be polite, a fulmination in 20th century or 21st century politicking. It doesn't work. Party politics doesn't work. The chaos that Naomi just spoke to, this kind of meltdown psychosis, psycho-civilizational meltdown, is a testament to the fact that we can't be governed any longer in the same way. What do you see happening on the political landscape come the elections this year? Steve, forgive me. You'll need to unmute.
Sorry about that. I was trying to be polite. Yeah, certainly it's not my decision as to what happens in America. We will know in a couple of months from now what the American people decide to do. And they have a choice. We can continue on with the status quo and the non-working government that we have, or we can decide to make a change from the people who have been running it and restore my particular interest is restoring the health of Americans, and we can make Americans healthy again. And we have a chance of doing that if we elect former President Trump. We have no chance of doing that if we elect Kamala Harris. So I think the big decision is going to happen very shortly. And we will either have 4 more months of agony trying to get the word out, or we will have the opportunity to create a lot of systemic change in America if we elect former President Trump to be our next president. So I think that's really the big driver. Now, as far as the other part of your question, which is how do we fix democracy? Boy, that's a really good question, and I'll kind of defer answering that because I've been kind of focused for the last 3 years on the statistics regarding the COVID vaccine. But certainly. One of the results of that is the data transparency, that all we need is a few changes in the law. Things like getting rid of the liability protection for vaccine manufacturers would be an enormous step in the right direction. And if that's the only change that's done, that would be tremendous. But there's clearly something wrong in the system that we're supposed to have this democracy, and yet we have laws on the books that protect vaccine manufacturers from all liabilities. Now, there is something wrong with that system, and there is something wrong with the system that has been in place, since 1986 or so, that has never been able to be challenged. And I think that if you polled most Americans, they would be against giving complete liability protection to vaccine manufacturers, especially since vaccines are supposed to be the safest medical interventions available to a physician. Why would those people who market the safest interventions need liability protection? It makes no sense. Mm-hmm. And so if we can start to address the reasons as to why those laws are on the books, and those laws are not challenged by anyone who is supposed to be representing the interests of Americans, once we can do that and figure out, okay, what's wrong and how do we solve this, I think we'll be in much better shape than we are today.
Very good, very good. Sherri, you recently shared a powerful clip on X, which was an exchange between our dear belated friend, Dr. Rashid Buttar, and the then CNN anchor, Drew Griffin, in 2021, where Griffin taunted Rashid Buttar about considering him a ticking time bomb after getting vaccinated, if you recall. And sadly, Griffin did come down with what appears to have been a turbo cancer shortly after taking the bioweapon shot, and he died in 2022. To those of us who know what has taken place, must help those who refuse to see. How do you think that we can best achieve this? And thank you for raising that piece on X. I think it was a very, very appropriate one. Sherri, forgive me, you're also muted there.
Sorry about that. I think that the statistics that Steve has put out, Ed Dowd has put out, and David Martin has put out about the turbo cancers, they're real. And until we see more public figures, sadly, that succumb from this taunting, I think that it's going to continue. I think that the mainstream media fails to cover all sorts of things. I mean, Steve mentioned the vaccine tragedy that's happened with Alexia here out in California. I covered that also on X yesterday, and they are in complete denial about all of those things. Again, I'll mention again the Vax 3 movie that is just a compilation. It's a 2-hour movie, a compilation of all of the of so many vaccine injured or dead people from the COVID-19 shots. I mean, it is just absolute. Polly Tommy, who's the executive director, producer of that movie, at some point in that movie, I thought it was the key element of the entire movie. I wish she would have expounded upon it a little bit more when she said, "I'm doing 30 to 50 interviews a day about all of these tragedies that have happened inside of the hospitals." And it's all across the country. It isn't isolated in any individual area, that I'm hearing the same thing. This is the biggest crime against humanity. And someone really needs to be looking into this and not turning a blind eye. And we've got physicians who are still promoting the COVID-19 shots. They've been approved for on the pediatric schedule for 24 and 25. They're still promoting it for pregnant women. They're still wanting to give a booster to all of those people. I remember seeing the head of the CDC, this was a couple of months ago, proudly bragging upon the fact that we now have the 10th COVID booster, and sadly saying that only 22% of people were willing to take it. And my first thought after I heard that was like, what's wrong with that 22%? Why are they willing to take that? And so it's an ongoing problem. And I did an interview the other night with two gentlemen, with Greg Harrison and Tom Havland, who are organic chemists who have taken those COVID shots or those COVID jabs, the long stringy clots that they pull out that they said is about the consistency of calamari. And they have actually analyzed it with physical chemistry technologies. And they found that so much of it has to do with the lipid nanoparticles, bound up with the spike proteins, and that there's a large amount of phosphorus that ignites them, and that causes the clotting in the normal clotting system in our human body that we are born with, and that is going to go on forever. And I asked them the question of saying, well, what about people that have had COVID jabs 2, 3, 4 years ago now? Are they still going? And they had one and they've not had any more. What is the likelihood of them developing these long fibrous clots? And unfortunately, sadly they said it is an ongoing process. It's an ongoing filamentous process, and that's why we are still seeing people dropping over, died suddenly. So it's until we pull these things off the market, until we change what you said, the 1986 Act, until we get rid of the PrEP Act, which is even worse, that was passed in 2005, which has become the template for which they have perfected and are going to continue to use it over and over and over again with the covered countermeasures. It's an endless situation, Sacha. And one of the questions that I got last night, as I went to that premiere, and then I did a Q&A session afterwards with people. One of the people in the audience said, "Why are there not hordes of people that are going after these people? Why is Fauci still walking on the street? Why has Birx sort of been able to float off into the distance? Why are they still able to manufacture these deadly, dastardly things?" And I didn't really have an answer for them. I don't know why there isn't some revolutionary group that is coming forward, why we're depending on the legal system, which turns slowly to be able to happen, and why the American citizens and the citizens of the world aren't standing up and saying enough, like they're doing in Africa.
So that actually goes back to the point that Naomi was asking me about the United Nations. Is there any hope so long as we have a United Nations? Any of the multilateral organizations, agencies, they're all just as rotten as each other, every single one of them. NATO is a diabolical construct. and simply a preservation. It's a war machine designed to preserve the black nobility's hegemony over coin issuing out of Switzerland, essentially. The Crown of England is the clearinghouse, and Basel, Switzerland, and all the rest of it. So the United Nations and the multilateral treaties that exist out there trump local law, that's the problem. Is the United Nations, the Security Council is a bully boy corridor. But you've got
Sacha, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to ask you, because you're right on the roll with this. I mean, the United Nations is having a very big meeting the 20th, 21st through the 23rd to get all these countries to sign on and employ their, I pledge allegiance to the United Nations. So please continue on with what you're saying, because people don't know that this is happening.
Right. And that's the point. I've been screaming about it for 15 years, longer, 20 years, even before the UN came to me and asked me if I could come in and help sex up their agenda, which I agreed to on certain conditions. That's why I brought David Martin in at that time, because we had some real plans to change the soup. And good people in the UN, high brass, really wanted us to do that. But once we got in, we realized that it wasn't the capstone of the pyramid that was rotten. The top cats in the UN were relatively good guys, and the body politic of the UN was made up of really good people. But there was a technocratic, kind of a Jesuitical core that was the insulation between the capstone and the body politic. And boom, that was where we saw the money. The Clinton Global Initiative was the product of that, incidentally, the CGI. So you got a situation where you have these multilateral treaties which do trump local covenants and compacts because they have to sit at the table with 50 other countries, 100 other countries once a year at the General Assembly meeting. They get bullied, they get coerced, cajoled. The WHO comes in to harmonize legislation and regulations and compliances. Harmonize, that's the term they use. The world economics are governed by the IMF, the Bank of International Settlements, the IMF, the World Bank, and the IFC, International Finance Corporation. So those multilateral big boys are the bullies. And they're literally sending their hitmen in, their agents in to Mozambique, to Somalia, to Ecuador, to Burkina Faso. And they are bullying the bejesus out of the governments. Their coercion tactics, the very worst, because they can foment coups overnight by pulling the financial rug from underneath any of these fragile economies. And these poor, beleaguered leaders, and I have met with hundreds of kings, queens, sultans, rajas, presidents, prime ministers. It's what I've done. It's been my wheelhouse. Even now I do that. I meet with leadership and I try to see where we can come in and help jerry-rig solutions and situations. I can tell you it is impossible to conduct any right action or pure truth so long as there is a multilateral edifice, a Babylonian edifice called the United Nations. Simple as that. I hope that rant was suitable to you, Sherri.
But you're wonderful. Right. Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the UN. Indeed, this is Babylonian Central. Tom, I confess, my mum is here with me visiting for a few days in Africa, and she's down the corridor there somewhere, probably hiding under a pillow right now. But she used to be a Top Gun news editor, and huge fan of all of you, incidentally. She's just so thrilled you're coming on. And I said to her this morning over breakfast, I said, I expect a hard question for each of my guests from you. And I confess she came up with two, one for you, Tom, and one for Steve. And she didn't come up with the ones for Naomi and Sherri in time. So I snatched away the paper. But here's the question for you, Tom, from my mum. So this is Mummy's Corner in the Arise Guerrilla broadcast.
Pressure's on.
Right, exactly. RFK says he'll take on Big Pharma if Trump wins by replacing the heads of CDC, NIH, etc. How can hospital CEOs and medical boards also be disarmed? And could that cascade into integrity and transparency?
I got a good answer for you. So the problem that occurred, and one of the most important things that facilitated COVID, was Obamacare. Now, there's a lot of things that we can all say are great in Obamacare. Who doesn't want prior conditions to still to be able to buy insurance? But you've got to understand, Obamacare was sold to the public on a couple things, but did a lot of horrible things. And the two most relevant things that it did that facilitated COVID were the consolidation of independent doctors into healthcare systems and the use of electronic medical records. Okay? Those two things were critical. You have to understand that when a doctor in a hospital system gets their protocols, gets their information, gets their whatever, they get it from the hospital system. It goes through the hospital system's medical board, the directors up there who decide what are the proper protocols, the way that they're going to treat it, and they create standards of care that legally are very, very difficult to deal with, right? So the malpractice is generally defined as deviating from the standard of care, and typically in a geographic location. But when a hospital system runs almost an entire state, well, they set the standard of care everywhere. And so if a doctor wants to do something different, like, for example, when COVID hits, if a doctor wants to use ivermectin instead of remdesivir, well, that doctor is deviating from the standard of care in that hospital system. So the hospital is going to say that could be malpractice. We're going to fire you if you do it. That was a result of Obamacare. There's a lot more that occurred. Obamacare allowed for tracking and tracing of our health and what was going on and everything else. The data that was collected through electronic medical records is terrifying. And, the thing about the electronic medical records aspect of Obamacare is at this point, everybody likes to think that their medical records are private. The only person that can't talk about your health is your doctor. Once you get put into the EMRs have sharing agreements with insurance, with government, with all these different groups, and it's all over the internet. The whole thing was a disaster. If we want to actually take care of the issues with the hospital system, we're going to have to roll back certain aspects of Obamacare. We're going to have to start having independent doctors. Imagine if there were 10,000 Sherri Tenpennys out there during COVID. Sherri's maintained her independence. That's why Sherri could speak the truth. They couldn't fire her, although they did go after her license. There were a number of good doctors out there that spoke out, but the doctors who spoke out were either independent or fired. And then the medical boards went after their license. So the ultimate solution here to dealing with this is we're going to have to change some of the law. And again, we're going to have to get over the fact that Obamacare was some sort of a big saving thing. There were good aspects of it, but there were also terrible aspects of it. And unless we roll back and start really empowering independent doctors again, we're going to be in serious, serious trouble. In Ohio, I just was supporting and we're working on legislation that allows doctors to determine how they want to treat their patients without risk of medical boards coming after their licenses and other such things. The doctor-patient relationship right now under Obamacare is fourth in terms of importance. Before you get to the doctor-patient relationship legally, you have the doctor-hospital relationship, the doctor regulator relationship or the government, and the doctor insurance company relationship. Only after those boxes are checked does the doctor-patient relationship come into play. And I'm going to finish with one thing, then I'm going to shut up because I think Naomi's got to go and I have to jump as well. I have in front of me, you asked Sherri about the turbo cancers. I have a November 2006 document, Guidance for Industry, Gene Therapy Clinical Trials Observing Subjects for Delayed Adverse Events. Within that document, they define gene therapy products in a way that would absolutely encompass the current COVID mRNA vaccines. And they specifically say that these long-term delayed adverse events that we're seeing include, and I'm going to read this verbatim, prolonged expression of transgene may also be associated with long-term risks resulting from unregulated cell growth and malignant transformation, which is cancer, autoimmune-like reaction to self-antigens, and unpredictable adverse events. We're seeing all three of those. And the turbo cancer was something that our FDA knew was likely to occur. I've got a long paper trail here. They covered it up. They lied about it. They hid it. Pfizer knew it. Moderna knew it. Everybody knew it. They lied, and they just figured that it would take a few years for those cancers to hit. So it would be very hard to show the causal relationship. Sasha, thanks. I got to jump off this. I hope that was good for Mom.
No, that was fantastic, Tom. Thanks very much. Greatly appreciated. Naomi, I think you've got to go as well. We got early warning of that. I've got a couple, one more question for Steve, and then I'll ask Sherri to also sign off. But Naomi, thank you for joining us today. Wonderful seeing you.
You too, thank you. And if people would kindly support the team that brought you so many of these headlines by ordering the Pfizer papers on Amazon now, it's very helpful for a book to have pre-orders. Thank you very much.
We'll push that out long and hard. Thank you, Naomi.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Very good. Steve, my mother's question for you was, surely there's already provision in law to criminally prosecute Big Pharma for not properly testing and correctly publishing data, and similarly for both institutions and doctors who remain silent in the face of overwhelming evidence of malpractice. But what about law to end the revolving doors between CDC, NIH, AMA, FDA, so on, and Big Pharma?
Well, I think that's secondary to the problem. That was suggested by RFK Jr. in a Wall Street Journal editorial where he listed 12 points, things that need to change, and so that revolving door was one of the aspects that needs to be changed. But the problem is that we don't have those criminal prosecutions that you're talking about. They may exist in theory, but they don't exist in practice. And the reason they don't exist in practice is because people have tried to do them and have failed. So, for example, there's a court case where with the, let's see, I think it was the MMR vaccine. And it's a film by Andrew Wakefield called Protocol 7. And he documents the case, and this is a very long trial. I think it was 15 years or more. And basically, if the government doesn't believe that they're defrauded because they went in on it and they knew they were being defrauded, they're not considered to be defrauded. So you can't use any kind of a fraud claim to whistleblow on these people. So they keep getting away with misleading the public and misleading the authorities, and the authorities know that they're being misled, so it's not considered any kind of violation. And so it's very troubling what's going on right now, because these people are literally getting away with murder. They have a license to kill. And that's not right. It's not right to be able to, in America, give these corporations effectively a license to kill. And they have killed at least 500,000 Americans. And that's at the very lowest estimate that I have for these. And so we need to stop the killing first before we address the revolving door issue. Certainly that's important, but it's not as important as holding people accountable for the at least 500,000 Americans who have been killed by their own government.
Yeah, indeed. Sherri, your comments to what Steve is saying. I mean, for me, it's a simple mathematical equation. Government doesn't work. The whole godless construct of, as I mentioned, the multilateral playing field, on which I'm something of an expert, doesn't work. It is broken and rotten to the core. Government itself, everywhere I go around the world, and I'm constantly traveling, government doesn't work. And I sit down with leadership constantly, and they agree with me. It doesn't work. It's broken. It was always broken. So for me, the business of fleecing humans through taxations in order to conflate a technology called government, which devours humanity on behalf of a cloister of Sabbatean bankers in Switzerland, that's part of the enterprise. It goes back to the Masonic, roots of government and the Roman Catholic Church. Government today is the franchise of the Roman Catholic Church. The point being, none of it works. And for me, it's a question of having to completely burn that to the ground and get out of Sodom and Gomorrah and go back to a covenant with the living soil. People should get out, claim allodial titling. We're doing it right now in Tennessee, incidentally. myself and my group, we're in the process of establishing a full-fledged micronation in Tennessee, in the heartland of USA. We anticipate by spring next year to have done all the filings, made all the public notices to the Pentagon, to the UN, to Vatican, Crown of England, and then bring people in under a whole new covenant, a whole new constitution. But it seems to me that no part of it works. So why are we paying any kind of attention, much less homage, much less coin to keep that that Leviathan going? Your thoughts, Sherri?
I support everything that you just said, Sacha. I think that that's just an amazing sort of thing. It's and not only do governments not work, I mean big systems don't work, like big ag, big food, big medicine, big healthcare. All of those things have become dictatorial tyrants to the people. And I think that all of them need to be dismantled. We were well on our way, really back in 2015 to getting the mass of American people educated about problems associated with vaccines when they started implementing, taking away your right to refuse, by SB 277, then SB 276 in California, and then that's marched in states across the country. And so people's right to bodily autonomy. And I've said for a long time, the separation between me and my government should start at the level of my skin. And we need to get back to that bodily autonomy. I mean, the whole idea of insurance, that we pay this thing over here to pay our medical bills. Why don't we just pay directly our medical bills to our physicians or whoever's taking care of us, and the cost would just fall out of the bottom. When they started making healthcare companies a public commodity traded on the New York Stock Exchange, they became beholden to their shareholders and no longer beholden to their customers, their doctors, or their hospital systems. That is another big thing that needs to be dismantled and go away. And until people have been so indoctrinated and trained with that commodity, that until they stop saying, does my insurance pay for it? We're going to be hard pressed to get a new healthcare system, because they're so used to that thing over there paying for me, and I pay that thing over there a lot of money.
Right.
So like
Right.
a big ag, big food, all the different things that they're doing with cattle and chickens and factory farming, all of it needs to be dismantled, in my opinion. Not just government, but good government in the way that you're talking about is a good place to start.
Indeed, indeed. Well, thank you, friends. Steve, whilst I've got Dr. Sherri here, do you have any questions you want from her, and vice versa, Sherri? The great Steve Kirsch is in the house. Well, it's all good.
No, we talk directly, so
oh, you do?
We do talk directly. But I will say that, until, what do you think, Sacha, with your connections and your brilliance and your way of putting this together, you and Steve both, if you're thinking about that, how do we mobilize more than just little factions of people across the country? I mean, this whole election process, 48 days away, that is really, really frightening. I mean, how do we really mobilize people to understand these concepts that we've been talking about here today?
Steve, you're more than welcome to answer that. I've got my answer, but I'll give the floor to you first.
Sorry, I was distracted looking at something else. What was the question again?
Well, what Sherri was asking was, how do we mobilize people, given the shit show of reality that we've all been variously discussing in the last hour?
Yeah.
And so, how does one mobilize? My answer to that, Sherri, is pretty straightforward, is remove all attention from the creature that is seeking to destroy you, in much the same way that good Catholics and churchgoers around the world have over recent years withdrawn their attention from the whore of Babylon, which is the Vatican. They've literally withdrawn their attention from that construct and returned more to the mystical traditions of the good Christic faith. So Christianity is blooming. The mystical traditions, the true traditions of the Essenes and the Cathars, is blooming, is flowering in the heart of Middle America. I see it all the time and around the world. But the false light construct of the Roman Catholic Church, so to speak, and the pedophilic nonsense that's been endemic in that institution for generations, all of which has been exposed now, has really laid to waste the edifice of the Christian religion, in the same way that fundamentalist Islam is also on its back foot for the first time in well over 1,000 years, because of the nature of fundamentalism. It's been seen to be what it is. It's diabolical, it's satanic, it's Luciferian, it's anti-humanity, it's anti-God. So the big religious constructs have fallen down. Now the final construct or edifice which remains in our midst is this creature called government. And it is a hollow vehicle. It's a hollow vessel. It is the little wizard with a little dick behind the curtain. That's what government is. It's a failed patriarchy. And it's not inhabited by humans any longer. It's all automated. It's AI. It's bureaucrats and technocrats and systems. There was this great saying, which is that, the phantom numbers were being entered into the ledgers on the outer fringes of empire 50 years after Rome fell. Fact. So on the outer fringes of the Roman Empire, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, they were still entering into the ledgers, the clerks. But the empire had fallen decades ago before. And that's kind of how I see government today. It's not really there. It's just systems and AI and supercomputation that's in play. And anyway, looking at the face of Joseph, gibbering sock puppet Biden, and his sidekick, Kamala pole dancer Harris, that's what it is. It's a joke. It's a Punch and Judy show. So to my answer is withdraw all attention from it, pay no homage to it, certainly don't pay any coin to it, tear up all the contracts, the spells and bonds, stop filling out forms with block black capital letters. When a brown envelope comes from the IRS, write FUCKOFF_, send it back, and remove yourself from the contract with the IRS. There is no law anywhere in America, law that requires you to pay income tax. That's the big joke. But there are plenty of laws that exist which would allow people to claim back their utility bills, their mortgages, their bank loans, their credit cards, and have them discharged against their birth bonds, their treasury bonds. That's the new gnosis. That's the new knowledge that needs to now be seized upon by people in Middle America and indeed Middle Earth. Real knowledge.
Touché.
Steve.
Yeah. So yeah, it's unfortunately it's an unsolved problem. We've known that vaccines cause autism for over 20 years now, and yet there's been no progress in 20 years.
None.
This is a well-known problem. So it's not so simple as when you say, how can people mobilize? First, you got to get people to be aware of the problem. In order to do that, in order for them to believe it, you have to convince the medical community. But the whole thing is set up so that the medical community will not speak out because they don't want to have their license to practice medicine revoked. So,
or their big paychecks taken away.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So this it's persisted for decades, and we've had lots of kids who are paying the price, the lifetime price for this because they're autistic.
That's right. And it's an abomination. Well, look, I think this has been a very, very helpful, if somewhat sobering, planetary health check. I'm very, very grateful to you, Steve Kirsch, and Dr. Sherri. I mean, you're both such extraordinary icons of the day, and I know history will reflect, if it's important, is another matter, but history will reflect on the extraordinary work that both of you have done and continue to do. Thank you very much for joining me today on the AGN Planetary Health Check.
Thank you, Sacha.
Thank you.
God bless. God bless. All right, friends. Wow, what an extraordinary lineup of extraordinary souls and so much information there. Please check Steve Kirsch's work. We've got all the links below, so you can check out the extraordinary body of work that this man has done and continues to do. And of course, with Dr. Sherri Tenpenny, Dr. Naomi Wolf, and the remarkable Tom Renz, who is fighting for all of our freedoms in that sense. I mean, I don't know if it was Sherri or Steve or Naomi raised the question about, courtrooms and what's the point of taking the fight into a courtroom if a courtroom is utterly corrupted, if all courtrooms around the world are simply cashiers on behalf of the parent corporation, which is what they are. All courtrooms in the accepted sense are acting as cashiers on behalf of the central priest banksters. So that's well known, well understood today. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, I was hailed as a madman for saying such things, but we all know it's true now by the grace of God. We'll continue to learn about real revelation, not the one that was a predictive program in the King James's Bible, but real revelation, which is pure truth as it unfolds in front of our very eyes, and which of course invites us into this is my health check update. Incidentally, friends, I'm getting my chance to say a couple of things here. Rely on your senses, your God-given senses. Go back to what your eyes see, what your ears hear, what your heart tells you, what your gut tells you. Arguably even more important than what your heart tells you is what your gut tells you. But the point being, I think the rudiment of all of it, and certainly the rudiment of being healthy in an insane world, is to never do anything that offends the soul. How about that? How about that just being the credo? Do not do anything that offends the soul. And that also reminds me of the source code, the premise for all natural law, which is that each of us should feel free to move unmolested across the surface of the earth, causing no harm, loss, or injury to another living soul, nor conducting any fraud in our transactions. And that one sentence is the source code, the premise of natural law. And if everyone lived by that credo, move freely upon the surface of the earth, causing no harm, loss, or injury to another living soul, and conducting no fraud in your transactions. If that, just that, was the mantra, not these fucking national anthems and flag waving and all of this moralistic nonsense culture, but just a simple source code that keeps us all in check. Cause no harm, loss, or injury to other living souls. But no, we've got 100 million statutes on the books and laws and courtrooms and a $250 fleecing operation masquerading as justice. So that is very much the problem. And it's not a problem which is going to go away until we disempower it. And we disempower it, again, by removing our attention from it and removing our coin from it. Our coin being a symbol, a totem of our life force, our time, and our motion. So I'll leave the rant at that. Friends, some of you are asking on this, and I'm happy to answer some questions. Let me just turn my attention quickly here to some of your questions. Lots of kind, very kind messages coming in from a lot of you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I've missed you too, AGN audience, and I know we've been off radar for a few months. You'll have to forgive me. I did a lot of touring I did a tour in America, followed by a tour of the United Kingdom and Ireland, and I've been in Africa for the last few weeks, where I'm also doing some public speaking. And I've just not been able to with the time zones. It's been very, very problematic and difficult for us to arrange AGN broadcasts. Okay, so I'm going to play you out, friends, and to answer one of the questions, where in Tennessee? Someone's asking here. Friends, you can go to newearthgoldenticket.com. I'm going to change in my name, I will put there we go. Boom. Check my name out here, my nameplate, newearthgoldenticket.com. You can go to that. I'm rather inclined to even play the Golden Ticket film. I'm going to ask this live audience, because I don't need to end the stream here. I could play out the film. Let me know if you want me to do that. Joanne's asking me to check my WhatsApp before I check out of this broadcast. So let me see what she's saying to me. This is how producers speak to their anchors, guys. Oh, bless her heart. She's uploading a commercial. This is for the New Earth Pharmacy. So before we end, I think it might be in there already. Let me run that commercial spot. I will come back after the commercial spot. I'll see if there's any questions here that warrant answers. And I will also ask you now, I'm conducting a little survey. If some of you would like me to run the golden ticket film, it's just about an hour long, but I'm happy to run it now in a couple of minutes time on the back of this broadcast, which will really give you a full backdrop to the golden ticket project, that the initiative, the Tennessee micronation that we're setting into motion in the heartland of Middle America, and how you can become one of the 1,000 golden ticket holders, which means that you get into the queue, you become a member of the micronation, you get into the queue, so you're fast-tracked to be able to make the acquisition of a plot of land in this exquisite place that we are, where we are building heaven on earth in Middle America. So if you'd like me to run that film, friends, tell me yes or no. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, the yeses have it, friends, on account of the fact that there are no no's. I'm going to run a quick commercial and then we'll come back. In fact, Joanne, if you can, is the commercial there? I'm going to run it here.
At New Earth Pharmacy, we firmly believe in the transformative power of naturally organic innovation to positively impact lives. The dedicated team of New Earth Pharmacy has successfully created an extraordinary and groundbreaking brand. We aim to reduce reliance on the pharmaceutical industry and its intermediaries, giving people the power to write their own wellness script. We're pioneering a movement that empowers individuals to take control of their well-being. Our team and advisory committee have worked long hours, ensuring that our products incorporate the best opportunity for full-spectrum immune support. Every step has been a carefully choreographed chain of events leading up to our launch. By harnessing the proteins derived from organically raised hens, we offer a long-awaited solution for those who have felt neglected by the traditional medical community. Our endeavor brings unprecedented innovation like nothing the world has seen before. New Earth Spike and New Earth Spike Turbo uses patent-pending egg protein technology to support the body's ability to defend against symptoms related to spike protein exposure. The New Earth Pharmacy is pleased to present our supplement, the New Earth Spike and New Earth Spike Turbo. Together, we are igniting a revolution. Welcome to a new era of wellness. Welcome to New Earth Pharmacy.
And there I was next door with my mum. Okay, friends, sorry, my producer's calling me here. I'm going to start the film here. Stand by, stand by, stand by.
We're at a pivotal moment. The old ways are crumbling, and people everywhere are searching for a new path. Enter the New Earth Tennessee micronation, an audacious leap towards freedom, innovation, and holistic living nestled right in America's heartland. America's heartland is more than a location, it's a symbol of resilience and unity. Here we're forging a revolutionary way of life that honors nature and champions true sovereignty. For those ready to break free from the ordinary, welcome to the New Earth Tennessee micronation. This is your call to action. Picture this: a life of true freedom, surrounded by nature's splendor and a community of pioneers. New Earth Tennessee Micronation is where sovereignty, sustainability, and community come alive. Our core features? The Regenesis Health Center, groundbreaking organic agriculture, homes crafted with sacred designs and cutting-edge sustainable technologies. We're redefining self-sufficiency. We're not just building a community, we're honoring ancient wisdom. By integrating indigenous knowledge, we ensure a respectful and holistic approach to our foundation. Introducing Golden Tickets, your exclusive gateway to this transformative community. Only 1,000 tickets grant you a coveted spot among the trailblazers. Golden Ticket holders gain access to the Sovereignty Academy admission and course, expert-led personal journey to sovereignty in America, Canada, and Australia, soon to be expanded. New priority: residents experience a new way life in a harmonious, regenerative, sovereign jurisdiction. Regenesis clinics access exclusive health and life-changing technologies, anti-aging and detoxification therapies. New Earth Pharmacy products, first in line, access to innovative wellness items. Lazarus Initiative Gold membership, lifetime access, upgrade or gift. Exclusive opportunities: engage in business, tech, and personal ventures within our sovereign framework. Ready to join the revolution? Secure your place in the New Earth Tennessee Micronation today. Visit newearthgoldenticket.com to purchase your golden ticket and become part of a movement that's reshaping the future.
It occurred to me that the whole world is beginning to turn its back on the United States. The whole world is beginning this predictive program of enmatizing the United States of America, because Middle America is the human genome, the epicenter of the human experiment, the human genome, which is to say the galactic genome. So you take down Middle America, the good people of Middle America, the devil succeeds. We're going to plant the New Earth Micronation in the heartland of America. This is the time. The one thing I've learned in meeting thousands and thousands of people all around the world is that every single human being has a story, and your story, whoever you are, is an extraordinary story. And it's the telling of that story that becomes paramount now, because the whole transhumanist AI shutdown of our sovereignty, shutdown of civil liberties, and the attempt by this matrix mind, this Borg phenomenon, to surreptitiously creep into our lives and dial us into oblivion. That's definitely been the agenda in the last century. The world wars created the shock and awe in order to throw this planet psycho-civilizationally into a post-traumatic shock disorder, which is what we all essentially suffer, every single human on the surface of the earth, almost from the moment the umbilical is cut with surgical steel, are thrown into some kind of trauma or the other. And the net of trauma is that when we're in trauma, our tendency is to roll over and to look to be saved, to look to be rescued. And that moves on into school, wanting to be cradled, wanting to be received in life. And of course, we're then spat out, since the 1970s with the Rockefeller orchestrated women's lib movement, which was really designed to get mothers out of the house and to get kids off the mother's tit, and to get kids thrown into nursery schools so that the program could begin earlier, and to get mothers into the workplace so that there were 2 taxpayers in each household, no longer just one. So that was a clever Fabianist Tavistockian agenda that played out and also contributes to our post-traumatic shock disorder. And now we see a world proliferating in 2 things. One, bureaucracy, and the other, pornography of trivia. Absolute trivia. Nothing real, nothing certain, nothing substantive or meaningful, nothing grounded guides most of us most of the time nowadays. So we're cast adrift between appetites and addictions. And that means pharmaceutical products, That means the glyphosates in the food supply, which your gut biome is addicted to bad food and Coca-Cola. And our minds are addicted to doom scrolling on TikTok and social media platforms, or slumping in sofas and giving ourselves over to the pornography of trivia masquerading as the 8 o'clock news or Netflix or whatever the fuck is dreamt up by these bad dreamers conducting the great thrall over us. So, what does that tell me? What does it tell you? What does it tell good, sovereign people? Well, those of us who have a spark left in us of sovereignty, those of us who have a spark left in us of outrage, reclamation of dignity, my dignity, becomes the first step, connected to the Sovereignty Academy, which is launching through the Golden Ticket. Reclamation of human dignity and the capacity to begin to engage life, engage relationship with people by smiling, tearing those goddamn masks off. And I don't just mean, the latter-day COVID masks. That was a delightful pantomime, but I'm talking about the masks that we wear as crypto-humans, humans who have been invited into becoming subhuman by this orchestration of insanity, of poisons in the air, the water, the food, the media, academia. The mask I'm talking about is the false mask, the crypto mask. When do we enjoin fellowship again with one another in our homes, starting in our homes with our families? When did we last look into the eyes of our family members? I mean, really look, really connect and exchange fire. And when did we last do it on our street with our neighbors and in the workplace? But I mean, really connect with each other, enjoying fellowship. That's the paramount thing, with one another. And then enjoying fellowship or rekindle relationship with the living soil and the creatures of the soil. How do we, as a species, a crypto-human species who have been utterly desecrated and downgraded and poisoned almost into oblivion, how do we reclaim, restore, revivify? How do we take back our lives? How do we step into the immanent angelic template, which all good believers of all good faiths know exactly what I'm talking about? That's this piece here. That's what this Golden Ticket is all about. It's about how we reclaim the living soil, how we step away from Sodom and Gomorrah, how we step away from the kingdom of the devil and the checkerboard of the kingdom of the devil. And the metric in how we do it is pretty straightforward. Like I said, it's relationship with one another, and then a return to relationship with the living soil. So you've got Vatican City, Basel, Switzerland, the Crown of England, which is the City of London, essentially, and then you've got Washington, District of Columbia. Those are your four principalities, friends. They are privately owned corporations, principalities with stakeholders, believe it or not. But the way in which they were founded and premised is very, very clever, because they essentially surreptitiously took control over the dominion of all peoples of the earth and all the soil of the earth. So every single square inch of soil, of land, which is registered to anything other than itself, is registered, offered up to Regius the King, handed over, signed over to the crown. In this case, that would be England, Charles in England. But it goes back, as I said, to the Vatican. So this is part of the enigmatic fact of the status quo, that everything that you think you own, you do not own. You do not own your farm or your tractor or your combine harvester. You do not own your bicycle if you registered it. You do not own your vehicle. You do not own your home. And friends, lean in close for this one. You do not own your own flesh and bones, because that too has been handed over to Cronus, to the crown. Remember birth certificates and the forms that you filled for your children, handing them over to the state? Why do you think CPS or whatever they call themselves can hammer your door down and steal your children? And by best accounts, hurl them into trafficking for all you know, and prostitution. God knows that's been going on for decades. It's because you signed the forms. You filled out the forms with the block black capital letters. So friends, we're about to teach you the metric of how we as a community are now about to begin that process. We're going to do it openly with love. We're going to be doing it as an act of peace, not as an act of war. That's something which will come as a novel surprise to Washington, doubtless. I will say this much. I have had it directly from military and intelligence personnel connected to the most powerful agencies that we are indeed on the cusp of a paradigmatic shift. The axis of power is shifting away from the private, nefarious corporations, and it is moving back to the people. This is the right time to be striking out, to declare a sovereign micronation in the heartland of United States. Why the heartland of America? Because America is the cauldron of humanity. It is all faiths, all cultures, all creeds, all peoples of the world are epitomized and exemplified even in America. And America, being the cauldron of the human genome, so to speak, is the genome of the universe, of the galaxy. The soft disclosure that's begun last couple of years connected to the Pentagon files and what have you, which are now dialing up on social media. You can begin to see this, and even in mainstream media, the talk about UFOs and Roswell, and yes, indeed, well, they've been visiting us for blah, blah, blah. Well, every sane farmer with a pitchfork and every sane patriot with a gun in their right hand and a Bible in their left knows full well about the ETs and the UFOs, and good humans don't have a problem with that. We're all sensible enough to know that we are part of a galactic expression under God's eternal sky. But no more of the control, no more of the dominion, no more of the hegemony, friends. We're going to end that with this extraordinarily noble and pioneering prospect that is the establishment of the first full-fledged micronation in the heartland of America. And yes, we're inviting 1,000 men and women of the living soil to join us as pioneers and to contribute into this. This is how we do it. How do we begin the process of atonement for stolen lands and for genociding peoples, retaking the soil for the indigenous peoples from whom it was taken 500 years ago, 300 years ago, handing it to them as the act of atonement, them absolving the crimes of our forefathers and ancestors, and then handing it back to us, to the 1,000 founders of the Tennessee Project. So the 1,000 founders will be the ones who are conducting the act of atonement on behalf of humanity. Sky, I want to bring you in the importance of atonement.
Yeah, thank you, Sacha. Well, you speak so eloquently to it. Yeah, it's such an important moment for history. I think the crux point for us was watching our indigenous elder, Sam Capilano, be put on the ventilator and have the remdesivir treatment and essentially be waterboarded. It was when we realized the depth of how distorted the system had been as far as health and wellness, and the absolute attack on our most precious resources, which is the people, the indigenous people particularly, and all people that have this united heart to see us rise in this time. For us, the mission is clear. It's to liberate humanity, to create a coherent, clear light path for people to awaken, to reconnect back to their truest, most authentic self. And we're here to do that with you. It's the only mission. We're really excited to be a part of bringing health sovereignty to a global audience and really truly God's given right to have access to these treatments, these therapies. The first phase 1 clinic will be in Bacalar We were looking to be operational in the new year, but in Tennessee, as fast as we can get there on the ground, we want to be able to support and help people as quickly as possible.
The other reason why I'm in South Africa is to advance the relationships with the breakthrough technologies that can drastically or radically heal humanity. So it is a priority for us, but turning the key on that build in Tennessee, the very first thing that gets built will be the clinic and the spa. It'll be a visitor center.
We've been treating people with advanced cancers and other pathologies, Lyme's and a lot of vaccine injury, these types of things. And our programs here are fairly expensive for people to access. So we really wanted to create a way that we could create the most amount of access to these programs, to these protocols. And so we have been hard working on a platform to be able to guide people through these processes at home. We have our first kit that's coming out, and we have 3 other kits lined up, which are really about cleansing the elimination pathways. The body is really a series of filtration systems. These filtration systems are plugged and become very toxic in the environment. It really it's amazing that we're all still living through this time with what we're seeing in the live blood analysis and what people are dealing with. But we know how to cleanse these pathways, how to clean the river of light, how to get rid of these parasitic organisms that are really the root cause of all disease, and which are living in these environments. We're seeing it here in the lab. It's incredible watching people come back into coherence, reignite that flame of passion and purpose, which we know is related to longevity, and looking forward, seeing with these new technologies coming that we're implementing and bringing into the Regenesis centers, these bioresonant frequency technology, light, sound frequency, incredible diagnostics with precision medicine, genomics, stem cells. Yeah. The first kit we're looking to have available sometime early in November with platform launched, where we can walk people through these processes, cleansing these filtration systems in the body and finding true health again.
The introductory work that is coming is the Wisdom's Calling, Blessings of Liberty, where we look deeply into the shroud of war powers. How was that laid? We'll have lots of evidence for where it was laid in the U.S. and where it was legislated in Canada and where it is in Australia and all of those Commonwealth nations. And when we see how it was and how it's designed, and we begin to see how that design is planted in our thinking and our habits and our speaking, then we begin to have a new awareness for what we can bring into the world. We can start looking at how, with that overlay, can we rise above that? So the Blessings of Liberty is the entree. It's not just the land.
Tennessee is divided into 3 regions, and we are focused on east of Knoxville and east of Chattanooga, if you were to look at the map. And there's several reasons for this. It's climate, it's topography, the geography, one of the largest, I think second largest underground freshwater lakes in the world, the crystals that reside there, the minerals, and the energy of the Appalachian Mountain Range, which goes back billions of years and includes multiple of the tectonic plates and continents merging the DNA from this planet in that region. So the topography is amazing, and that is generally the region to be announced soon where we plant our Rainbow Tribe flag.
And I also understand that Tennessee has strictly verboten geoengineering moving forward, which is a very good indicator. Again, another good reason why Tennessee is on our radar. There's a question here saying, is the ITNJ applicable globally, the International Tribunal for Natural Justice, and where is it situated within the Tennessee Project? Yes, indeed. We are beginning now to consolidate the position of the International Tribunal for Natural Justice, finding its first bricks and mortar court, so to speak, or theater, if you prefer, in Tennessee. So we do intend to headquarter the International Tribunal for Natural Justice and its sister organization, which is being set up right now, the World Hereditary Council, the WHC. But America right now is the priority. We've got to pierce the corporate veil there, and that's because Washington District of Columbia, really in the last 4 years, it's been a hollow vessel. We're dealing with something which is not really there. It's just not. We're living in a satanic theater, which has hitherto been controlled by satanic icons, interposed into the theater of Washington, D.C., and that the tax fleecing of billions, nay, trillions of dollars of tax coin over generations has been sequestered into the basement, which is shared between the City of London, the Vatican, and Washington, D.C., with Switzerland acting as arbiter in that sense, or as the clearinghouse. But the point being that those trillions of dollars have been pumped into black operations budgets, into amping up a deep state, the weaponization of the entirety of this earth through threat, coercion, and manipulation. But the threat is the baton, is the taser, is the gun, is the nuclear missile, and the tanks. And it's always been thus, or certainly in the last century. So that's the role that Washington District of Columbia has played, establishing a hegemony through the thrall of fear over the whole of humanity, and butchering scores and scores and scores of countries all around the world in the last century. So that has been not attributable to the good people of America, but to Washington District of Columbia, quite separate to the people of America. We're not speaking to the FDA. We're not speaking to the IRS. We're not speaking to Washington, D.C. Those are in dishonor. They are dishonorable. They are hollow vessels. We speak to the living. Marcia, have I got some of that right?
You've got it right on the nose. They're empty. They're empty in our world of reality, and we're bringing Lazarus to life. We're raising our spiritual competency.
The world's first full-fledged, full-spectrum, auto-determining micronation. It is complex. It's to do with jurisdictions. It's to do with understanding legality and understanding lawfulness. More than that, it's understanding your own standing in this world. You and I, sons and daughters of God, living men and women of the living soil. Why you and I elected to compose ourselves in this hologram, why you and I elected to steer the plasma of our souls into this insane vector of time-space. It was not to take the fucking knee, excuse my French. It was not to pay tithes to the Roman Catholic Church. It was not to pay coin or render anything unto Caesar, simply because Caesar says it belongs to Caesar. This is the age, friends, when you and I and our kin, our communities reclaim the living soil, reclaim relationship with the living soil, which is to say the paramagnetic forces of Tara, of Earth, of this Gaia, this extraordinary plane of existence that we live upon. How you and I utilize this sacred temple of the human flesh, the human body, to reconvene relationship with the divine, which is to say relationship with ourselves, which is to say relationship with our conscience and our consciousness in action. To those of you who followed my wheezing over the years, you'll know I take this subject very seriously, and I know that millions and millions and millions of you do too, which is why, by the grace of the eternal God, we're all standing still, looking one to another, and exchanging fire in the eyes, because we were born to do this and to be this in the now, the sacred geometry of the living moment. So this is the culmination of a great many years of my own efforts. 10 odd years ago, 11 years ago, 2013, we launched the New Earth Project. We've built and proven out the metric of the elevation of art, beauty, and consciousness in our petri dish in Bali at the New Earth Haven.
Just a little deeper, involved, just a little deeper. Hold your breath, want to keep breaststroke, till the end, till the end. Jump, you're reckless, hold your breath, you're reckless, breaststroke, you're reckless, till the end, till the end.
We're now in the process of groundbreaking in the New Earth Sanctuary in Mexico. Many of our founding pioneers are amongst the team here. It's something which is underway. Since we began the process of the New Earth Sanctuary and began to explore the conversation with people all around the world, and as I personally, as that intro piece says, as I looked to Middle America and started to see how America is becoming enmatized by the world, how the international community is being orchestrated, not entirely, but in the main, by Sabbatean Luciferian forces that operate through academia, operate through the institutions of power and of military and intelligence might. All of this cacophony and orchestration seeks to enmatize America and to turn America into the fall guy. Precisely, it would appear, in order to bring about catastrophic failure of humanity. Because if America fails, humanity fails. I will also make a distinction here at the beginning of this summit. To those of you who are conscious enough to understand what I'm saying, you won't even need to hear me say it. To those of you who are not conscious enough, lean in, pay close attention. Middle America is not Washington, D.C., okay? 90%, 85, 90% by my reckoning, of Americans are not the East and West Coast liberal, intellectual, satanic, Luciferic enterprise. And Middle America are not Washington, D.C., or the Pentagon, the CIA, and all the other alphabet agencies which have done a thoroughly decent job of invoking the kingdom of the devil into America in the last 75 years, to be sure, but it goes back longer than that. Here we are, you and I, about to enjoin a new covenant, which is to plant the New Earth nation flag in the heartland of Middle America. That is a sacred task, and it is a sacred covenant, because we're about to reclaim the living soil. We can only do it as a body of living men and women of the living soil, as a fellowship of men and women of the land. The age that besets us right now could be described as the onset of the flight from Sodom and Gomorrah 2.0. Be sure, the tanking, orchestrated collapse of the US dollar, the emergence of these other primary portals of economic enterprise like BRICS, are part of an orchestration, for good or for ill. I'm not here to judge them. But I will say that the takedown of the US dollar is integral to the collapse of humanity, in much the same way that the hacking into the mRNA DNA of humanity was intended to bring about autodestruct of the angelic humans. Because that is really what we're talking about here. We're talking about the takedown of the angelics. And that's what this hacking into our blood and our genomes has been about. I'm satisfied that millions and millions and millions of you sufficiently know the truth of this. We can speak boldly to the truth of this now. 5 years ago, I was a madman. 10 years ago, I was a madman. 15 years ago, I was a madman. Truthers and disclosure merchants have long been vaunted as madmen. And that's fine. But we also know that those of us who played the joker in the pack, so to speak, and I'm sure great many of you and your families and your communities have also fulfilled that divine function of being the joker in the pack. But we were right, and we're proving right now. The mainstream is collapsing. We are very, very proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with Hereditary Chief Phil Lane Jr., regarded commonly as the eagle in the Eagle and Condor prophecy, which means to say he is paramount representative in that sense of all of the Native American First Nations in Canada and USA. And that is to say over 740 First Nations are represented under the banner of the eagle. I was with him a few weeks ago at the Palenque Congress, where the eagle and the condor met from the Amazon, and the hummingbird and the quetzal came together. Pay close attention to his words.
Mitakepi, my very, very beloved members of our human family, I want to extend a very warm and loving handshake to each and every one of you as we celebrate this great day of the New Earth, Tennessee micronations unfolding, a reflection of the sacred prophecies that said a new global civilization would emerge at this time, which it is. And this is one of the signs of many across Mother Earth that this is happening. So in honor of this great, great historic occasion, I'd like to offer a prayer as well as our chief White Buffalo Calf Woman song. This song says this, in which we have to have when we go forward. Friend, kola le chale chua, it says, friend, do it this way. Whatever you do in life, do the best you can. If you get knocked down, get up. If you get knocked down 1,000 times, get up 1,000 times. If you do it that way, the creator of all good things is going to see you. Otun Kashla Wakanta, creator of the universe, most beloved one, all powerful one. We call upon your holy powers at this time to bless this new earth, Tennessee micronation, and all the relatives who are going to work together in unity and harmony to begin truly manifesting a new earth. We call all the tribes and nations of the east, from where comes the red sunrise, to come together in unity and harmony. In the south, from where comes new life, we call them together in unity and harmony. The west, from where comes thunder, lightning, and rain, we call upon them to come together in unity and harmony. And in the north, from where comes the cleansing white snow, we call them to come together in unity and harmony. And we give thanksgiving to Father Sky and Mother Earth, and also the sacredness that Mother Earth reflects in womankind. And may we fully understand the wings of the eagle, the condor, the hummingbird, the quetzal are two. One is man and one is woman. Until both wings of the eagle, the condor, and the hummingbird and the quetzal have equal power and respect, our human family will not rise and fly to its promised sacred destiny. And so now I want to share this sacred song in honor of this time. Again, the words say this: Kola lechele luchuo. Friend, do it this way. Whatever you do in life, you do the best you can. You get knocked down, get up. You get knocked down 1,000 times, get up 1,000 times. Then the Creator's going to see you. Then it says, if you do it that way, whatever you ask for, that's exactly the way it's going to be if we sit in the circle in a sacred manner. That's the covenant. We sit together in a sacred circle with responsibility. Then whatever we ask for, that's exactly the way it's going to be, and we have to proceed like that. Holy chili chuo, holy chili chuo, holy chili chuo, holy chili chuo. Hey chanuki, dakuya chinkuye chetukdeo, ho chokawaji, yuo takeki, hexuyo pahiye, ho they chanuki. Dakuya chinkuye chetukdeo. So Bitakiyepi, I give you my love. I give you a big hug, for we are one human family. We are all indigenous people of this Mother Earth, and you must awaken to the fact that each of us is born a sovereignty, ancient, imperishable, and everlasting, and treat each other as that, not as our earth suits, not our skin color, not our gender. For the soul has no gender. The soul has no race. The soul has no class. The soul has no ethnicity. The soul is a reflection of the oneness of the Creator. Hallelujah chante washtelo. Shukmano hemedo, Chidupasapa hemedo, Halabichan washte. My names are Shukmano and Chidupasapa, and I stand fully responsible before the Creator for my words and my actions. Halabichan washte.
I remain fully responsible for my words and for my actions. And I think that essentially becomes the cornerstone to this noble endeavor, where we begin to enjoin fellowship and lay claim to the soil, lay claim health sovereignty, look to ourselves, look to our kin, look to our communities to define the world that we want to live in, and no longer look to the third-party intervention. Government has no place in the kingdom of heaven. None whatsoever. None. The Catholic Church is moot. All monotheistic, religious, churchish institutions that have moved away from the mystical roots and traditions of those great faiths have no further business in holding thrall over humanity. The resurrection of the ancestral blood song is becoming increasingly a vital component of how we convene a new fellowship and how we reconstitute any kind of a nation. The next nation that is constituted in this world must be non-divisive, non-sectarian. It must be the nation of the Rainbow Warrior, or the Rainbow Warrior Nation.
This is a ancient prophecy that really is being fulfilled in this moment. The ceremonies that have happened, the ones you're at in Palenque, the lighting of the 8th fire, this is the culmination of all the ceremonies that have been guiding the indigenous people through this dark winter that they knew would have a sunrise, and they believed that now the 8th fire begins that process of coming together as this rainbow nation to create this new earth paradigm. The words of Chief Phil guide us in that.
Ancient texts and prophecies like the Eagle Condor prophecy have foretold this golden age of humanity that we are awakening to.
There are only 1,000 golden tickets being made available. There will be 1,000 golden tickets at the price point of 10,000 USD per ticket. We've had scouts on the land in Tennessee tax-free residential status that will be contingent on the full realization of the allodial titling and the clearance of federal liens against the land. It's a residential micronation, obviously. We're looking for people to come and purpose their lives. Once you've made an acquisition of a golden ticket, there's a period of 3 years that you have to locate into the nation. There is no secret that there's a concerted effort to collapse the US, collapse the United States of America, and of course the collapse of the US dollar is underway. This is the perfect time to come to the rescue in that sense and to send the cavalry in. And who or what is the cavalry? Well, obviously that's you and I. It's moms and pops. It's conscious parents, grandparents. It is young people seized with consciousness and the desire to put consciousness into action. Marsha will explain lawful and legal standing and how that works. Sovereign jurisdiction is where and how you declare it under the universal sky, standing directly beneath central sun, as each of us are born sons and daughters of God. All of us can lay claim to that jurisdiction of pure sovereignty and wave out of our way the kingdom of the devil. And point of fact, we're required to do that now. A 0-point economic base and a 0-point social ecological base is integral to manifesting a micronation that is fully sovereign. Why do I say that? Because you can pretend it's sovereignty, but if you have an umbilical cord connecting you to the kingdom of the devil, which is an electrical utility line, for instance, or any benefits and services, amenities on offer by the parent corporation, by the government, so to speak. If you are tethered to the government through that umbilical and your food production, your agriculture, your sanitation, your electricity, your heating and your lighting, if those are contingent and dependent on that umbilical cord to the kingdom of the devil, then you are not sovereign and you are not free. You are indentured. Okay? So 0-point technology becomes integral here. Breakthrough vanguard quantum solutions become integral here. I've got my friend and partner, Bruno Mihalescu, here with me. I'm going to bring him in right now.
Thank you very much. It's a blessing to be here with you, Sacha, and the team and the world. It's a great mission, what we are putting together for humanity, and I'm so blessed to serve.
We are building now prototypes. We are able to power up very significant electric output. Do you want to speak a little bit to what it is we're doing without giving too much away? Just tell us what you can.
It's just a generator. It's a normal generator, electric, and it's made by the New Earth, and it's working. So a free energy device. That's
very
fine.
good. Okay, that's it. Don't say anything more because you get yourself into trouble. To those of you who know my backstory, 12 years ago, I was Director General in the United Nations Intergovernmental Sector. I was the Director General for the renewable energy sector and dealing with breakthrough innovation. And at that time, Dr. David Martin and I were doing our best, working together with the Exemplar Zero Initiative to break the icebreaker, to bring quantum solutions into the playground. We didn't succeed. We nearly did. I know a lot about this game. I know why we've not been able to power up communities with free energy technology and 0-point. We've had these technologies for generations. That's the least of the issues. I've witnessed so many of them. I've tried on a couple of occasions with the New Earth to bring them forward. I am feeling fiercely confident that this is the right time. I happen to know that it is the right time. I'm sufficiently notified by good people within the military intelligence basement, shall we say, that this is the appropriate time. We've been developing for the last couple of years our own technology solutions in Eastern Europe. And we've got them working now to bring them into the market, to plug them into our micronation, which becomes the first of many micronations as we franchise or syndicate these micronations around the world. Certainly after Tennessee, through the United States, all states, and then to the world at large. This is going to take a while. It's going to be a process, but we can and will implement those technologies. Why? Because we don't need to be seeking or soliciting permission from the parent corporation once we've established the legal and lawful sovereign jurisdiction. That's why the law piece comes first and then the technology comes in. But we can do it, and we will be flashing the kimono in the next few weeks on the technologies. So the 0-point economy will be sustained and derive off the proprietary technologies which we already have in-house. Now, we're not going head-to-head with any governments or any so-called authorities. We will do this lawfully and legally. And as Marsha reminds me and us at every turn, everything we do is an act of peace. We're designing sanctuaries within sanctuaries. We have butterfly and insect sanctuary, couples with a bird sanctuary. The bigger circle beyond that will be the wildlife preserves. And we'll unveil that master plan probably within 6 weeks thereabout. And that'll be revealed to our Golden Ticket members. So once you have bought in and you are a founding pioneer, you are going to be invited to participate in our summits, meeting different members of the team. Honey farm, beekeeping, integral, obviously, to this New Earth, Tennessee. Honey is going to be a mainstay of how we set in motion biodiversity and syntropic agroforestry. Desperately important science. This I won't go into it here, but syntropic agriculture, vital. Vertical greenhousing. This is where it gets exciting. Hitherto, it has been impossible to really make vertical greenhousing a success. And why is that? It's because it's cost prohibitive. To run greenhousing, vertical greenhousing is very, very heavy on energy, electrical consumption, or whatever your power source is. Now that we have our own energy technologies that once they insert and installed into our 0-point microgrid, we will be powering up our vertical greenhouses on close to 0 point. And that means that we can grow Madagascan apricots in Tennessee. We will never need to import any bullshit from around the world, no matter how exotic or luxurious it is. We've got to get on with fabricating, with engineering, designing, and manifesting ourselves.
The magic of this is, Sacha's, we've been working for quite some time in Bacalar, Mexico, in Quintana Roo, and a lot of these ideas and concepts that we've been talking about and that Sacha's sharing here, we are on the verge of implementing now there. So it's very exciting to see this rolling out. It's very exciting. We have these beautiful concepts and technologies, but we're actually going to be able to test them and try them and implement them and adjust in real life for people to come and see and visit and experience while we're doing the same in Tennessee. So it's very exciting.
So vertical greenhousing integral to the prosperity model, and where you don't diminish the quality of an indulgent and even luxurious lifestyle. Quite the contrary. Quite the contrary. As we've been proving out with the New Earth Haven in Indonesia, in Bali, over the last few years, the elevation of art, beauty, and consciousness is a cornerstone to how human beings want to step into a new Earth horizon. Nobody. Once you remove the Catholic Church, which is to say the priest banker, which is to say the profiteers and racketeers from the mix, all of a sudden you have a prosperity economy. And that's precisely how we do it and how we intend to manifest this moving forward. New Earth bioarchitecture, again, for those of you who know anything about our work, you know that we've led the world in many regards in this, and we're proving that out now on the ground in Mexico. We've done a great deal of that work in Bali, in Indonesia, and Tennessee will be the spectacular template for the world as a micronation, employing bioarchitecture and bioresonance at the heart of our initiative. one of the first turnkey things we will be doing in the Tennessee micronation to facilitate those of you who are in business and commerce and need to manufacture or engineer, fabricate. New Earth Tennessee will facilitate our first AGN radio and TV station. I think Dr. Nancy Ash is delighted that we'll be broadcasting coursework from the New Earth University. Of course, we will be building a New Earth University campus. We're doing one in Mexico on Laguna Bacalar, and we're twinning it with Tennessee. And so student bodies will be able to bounce between the two locations. We'll also be broadcasting Lazarus and what have you from the studio in Tennessee when I'm based out there. Ceremonial ground. This will be the very first thing we break ground on in Tennessee. Chief Phil Lane Jr. and other First Nation elders and leaders and wisdom keepers will be joining us. First day of spring, or it'll be the spring equinox. That is what we're designating right now as the proclamation of the New Earth micronation in Tennessee. That's the intention, and the divinations will have been done on the land, and the consecration will occur on that day. And we have cultural and religious and spiritual leaders and elders who are coming in to stand shoulder to shoulder with us on that day. And some of the indigenous elders who are coming in to do the consecration of the new earth, because they understand that this is the genesis point of the Rainbow Nation. That once we pierce the corporate veil, with 1 square inch of soil, sacred soil in the Americas, once that corporate veil is pierced, that is the onset of the resurrection of the angelic human. It's the return of the living sons and daughters of God, the living men and women of the living soil, to the living soil. And everything changes at that point. The wisdom keepers, the elders, and the hereditary chiefs understand what we're doing. And the World Hereditary Council will be finding its home base in Tennessee, in the middle of America. Because the Rainbow Tribe is by distinction the black skin, brown skin, red skin, yellow skin, and white skin peoples of the world, all reconvening under a covenant of fellowship of man. These are, to me, the most important element that we're building in Mexico and also will be building in Tennessee, which is small havens in the heart of these micronations, which engender the conscious birthing and the conscious dying. Some beautiful images by Giselle Coy. We have a architectural design team that will build the most exquisite places you can imagine. Livestock and seed banking will be an integral turnkey part of the Tennessee project. This is, friends, a return to the living soil. And that is our disclaimer, which is important because we're still operating somewhat in the kingdom of the devil, and powers that be or powers that were certainly do not wish for us to succeed. Not that we should pay too much attention to those voices or those hearts. They are frankly moot as far as I'm concerned. Marcia, it's just you and me, and we're going to speak now about jurisdiction.
Everything really is a trust. It's a sacred trust that we come and that we bring here. And we, through life and through the superimposition of what you call the witchery, the language. We are actually speaking a language. English is a language of commerce. English is a spell casting language. So we're casting spells. And so over the real relationship that we have with Mother Earth, there have been all of these entanglements. There's been feudal entanglements and security entanglements. And there's this kind of cocoon that has been spun around not only the earth but ourselves. And so what we do is we set aside in a private contractual relationship, in commerce, the contract is the law. So when we have a private contract, we have a private trust that is holding the integrity of our relationship with not only each other, but with the world at large. We have an opportunity to be those divine trustees, those divine stewards that bring this into manifestation. And while we tend to look at things from the corporate perspective, from that what you call the parent corporation, we're really not defined as a 508. We're seen through the Internal Revenue Service in 508 capacity, because as the spiritual expression that we are, the Internal Revenue Service recognizes that church spiritual controlled organizations are immune. They're exempt. They're not exempt. Exempt is a privilege. They're excluded from the perspective. Especially in the United States, we have the First Amendment that says that Congress can make no law concerning an establishment of religion or the free exercise thereof. So when we come in our spiritual capacity, which is what I'm very excited to bring through the Sovereign Academy, a whole level of understanding who we are in that sovereign capacity. How do we look in and bring that sacred capacity? And then what is our relationship and our standing with the world from that sovereign capacity? The first job in Tennessee is to extricate the land from those attachments, from the feudal attachments, from the security attachments, and go back into the place where the real ownership was granted originally, and basically from conquest, from the war powers. I find in the preliminary information in Tennessee, the grants were to the soldiers who they couldn't pay for succeeding in the war. And so we go back to those original grants, and those grants say we're giving full ownership of this land forever. After that those became very dormant, and all these economic and jurisdictional attachments began to attach over the land. So we extricate that, and you actually can experience a process of extricating those feudal attachments and those economic attachments honorably in such a way that we regain our relationship with ownership. And then after we have cleared that, we go back to the sacred stewardship that Chief Phil and that perspective brings, going back to those dormant agreements for us to maintain our relationship with the land. Go back to the 451 AD, the 6 global treaties that maintain those agreements and bring those and claim those forward. And even before that, our true relationship with Mother Earth, and a whole process of clearing our path for that.
Are we seeking permission in this along this path?
There's no part of it that's seeking permission. We'll find it when in the first entree into the sacred honor, and bringing forward our sacred honor and our sacred capacity. Remember, capacity is who we are. It's that spiritual being that is here having a physical experience. And so when we go in through the entree into the Sovereignty Academy, we're bringing what I refer to as wisdom's calling, the blessings of liberty, where we begin to look deeply into our capacity, and through that raise through and walk through the treaty treaties that recognize that capacity, so that we're now fully developing that spirit, that soul capacity, and then looking to see what is our standing, what is our relationship with the world when we first establish ourselves as that capacity.
Very good. So speak about national passport status within the New Earth micronation, for instance, or identification. And secondly, we'll talk about be the bank, how we claim the banking.
Again, national passport status is a status. It's a relationship. How are we related to the world? In every culture, we have a status and how we're related. We have passports. And in certain ways, we have defined ourselves. By our application, we have entered into whatever relationship we're seeing in the standing in our relationship with the world. So how do we modify that relationship with the world so we're seen as those sovereign beings? When you know the way that governments, the way that public trust is designed, it's designed to contain those people who do not live spiritual lives, who do not live honorable lives, to contain those, so those people who do live spiritual lives are seen and act unencumbered by the defects of the what did you call it, the witchery. We break the spell that witchery has over our thinking and our speaking. I mean, when we speak even war and peace, when we get to in the blessings of liberty, is we begin to see that 0 point neutrality that is the whole breakthrough of the dichotomy.
Be the bank. What does that mean?
You are the bank, you are the gold. All this, we look at gold, we look at the assets, we look at the land, we look at all those things, but I will tell you, nothing in this physical domain happens without your energy. Your energy is the gold. You are the energy behind any economic venture. And so in the outline that I've got for the whole curriculum, it's not just a course into the Sovereign Academy. It is a whole curriculum, not only of discovering, going deeply in yourself, and even looking at your speaking. Are you speaking those war powers that we've been designed? We've been designed through a very careful formula to bring war powers into the world through our speaking, through our thinking, through our divisiveness. And when we realize that and we look deeply, 10 weeks of the blessings of liberty, the biggest part of it is observe yourself in the process. How are you speaking? A lot of people over the years have really admonished me because they say, oh, we're just bantering semantics. But I am not bantering semantics. I am changing the spell that's being cast in the world.
Exactly right. And that's the seminal piece. Law of nations. What is that? Why is it important to have some comprehension of law of nations? And where does it take us? Do we have to treaty with the world at large once we establish ourselves as a fully allodial titled micronation?
We can, and treaties can actually be engaged between locations for the new earth. And what we do is, when we understand who we are in that sacred capacity, and we come forward in that sacred capacity, we're protected under the law of nations. Book 4 of the law of nations is all about the protection of public ministers and the right, and even the Army Field Manual 2710 is about the military protecting our free passage through occupied territory. And when we understand that all of us have lived all of our lives, I don't care where you're on the planet. Well, I've seen now some places that haven't been infringed by being occupied territory, but few places on the planet are not living in occupied territory. But when you become that sacred entity that's protected for free passage through occupied territory, you change your standing with the whole world.
Beautiful, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Well, I think, Marsha, that's a pretty fine introduction to this piece. I know that the Sovereignty Law Academy that we launch in October this year, that's the plan, 1st of October. I know it's going to be oversubscribed. You're going to play the seminal role in that. You mentioned when we first met about the corporation soul, and that's something that you're going to be speaking to, I believe, in the coursework. Can you, just before we wind this section up, just speak about that? What is a corporation soul?
A corporation soul is a religious organization. It's a structure for expressing yourself in the world in your sacred capacity, and it is based on motivated to bring your soul essence into expression in the world. It's a way of looking at yourself and be seen in the world as a religious expression.
This is really the intersect and the dovetailing of the fulmination of all of our life's work. I mean, it's all a singularity, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we've just merely touched on the outline that I have, because I've got different classifications. And this is really the self-discovery we've talked about. And then I've talked about self-mastery. Now, how once we've discovered ourselves, how do we master that and take it out into the world? And then how are we competent in this? This is not a collapse. It's a transition.
Yeah.
It is an expression of our souls coming fully into fruition.
You guys have such an incredible superdimensional grasp of and hyperdimensional grasp of the physics of healing, the physics of treating, healing, and curing. Now, you're not allowed to use those words. The C word is a dirty word. You thought it was. It's not. It's cure, friends. That's the dirty word.
Regenesis means to rebirth. It means renewal. And so regenesis represents the rise of the phoenix from the ashes. It's the birthing of a new paradigm of health sovereignty, healing, and the resurrection of our original angelic template, as you speak to so eloquently.
And we're going to be folding into these Regenesis centers the very, very best technologies in the world, which we have access to and which we are variously partnered in. The most advanced microbiology. We will have our sovereign jurisdiction where we will be able to manufacture our own products.
At New Earth Pharmacy, we firmly believe in the transformative power of naturally organic innovation to positively impact lives. We're pioneering a movement that empowers individuals to take control of their well-being. New Earth Spike and New Earth Spike Turbo uses egg protein technology to support the body's ability to defend against symptoms related to spike protein exposure. The New Earth Pharmacy is pleased to present the New Earth Spike and New Earth Spike Turbo. Together, we are igniting a revolution. Welcome to a new era of wellness. Welcome to New Earth Pharmacy.
There's been this onslaught, this sort of attack on the human, through air, water, and our food and our medicine, to really disconnect us from the sacred, disconnect us from that the sovereign right of health and wellness. And we really found that all pathology is from a lack of flow of the river of light. It's about giving people a very clear step-by-step process, integrating these ancient practices with these cutting-edge technologies to revolutionize and really simplify.
We both have strong connection to many medicine lineages, including the Quiero. In those teachings, the traditional people of the Andes Mountains, they talk about how dis-ease has its roots in the subtle imprints in the energetic field of the body. And so, of course, having that understanding of health and healing, we know that we need to work with those energetic, emotional, mental imprints as well as the physical. In our temple, which is one of the pieces of Regenesis, the sacred sanctuary where we bring ancient shamanic wisdom traditions and modern transformative therapies to converge to create profound healing experiences. And this includes yoga and meditation practices, includes breath and sound journeys, relational somatic therapy, psychedelic assisted therapy, sacred plant medicine ceremonies to support people in transmuting dense energies and accessing those multidimensional states of consciousness.